Why is it that we have criminal candidates at all?
अब तो डर लगने लगा है.
Why is it that people vote for them?
Why parties like this are not able to succeed in politics?
Limited success against money and power because it's all about black money.
Why is the collection of money by political parties so opaque?
Television advertising, there is newspaper advertising, there is video vans running around. People did 3D rallies during 2014.
From the 70s and 80s, elections started becoming very expensive.
हमारे 5, 10, 50 रुपए के योगदान का मतलब है मोदी जी को हमारा सपोर्ट.
A lot of money goes out in cash during elections. If you're paying for a vote, you're probably going to get that vote.
Something to the tune of 90,000 crore rupees are going to be spent in the 2019 elections. What was spent in 2014 was in itself something that was very startling.
Our target is 70 lakh rupees. That is the official limit that one can spend in the period from the nomination to the election. So we are looking to raise that through crowdfunding.
Indian elections have gotten way more expensive since 2012, 13, 14.
We have in the past 2 weeks, two and a half weeks since this crowdfunding has been launched, managed to raise 30 lakh rupees, which is an extremely encouraging response.
Now, if you look at the mediums of delivering a message, there is social media, yes, but there is also television advertising, there is newspaper advertising, there is video vans running around. People did 3D rallies during 2014. There are just so many more mediums that if you want your message to go across to the maximum number of people, you'd end up using all of them.
Contributions range all the way from 100 rupees to 2 lakh rupees. And the average contribution size is approximately between 2,000 and 2,500 rupees.
Just the government expense on advertising has doubled during the term of this government. That in itself tells you how much money is going into the advertising process of an election. You add to that the amount that needs to go into fuel and the vehicles that are operating for political parties, the amount that's being used to run the party offices at the district level and the booth level, and just the fuel costs for the Karyakarta's bikes. All of these would add up to thousands of crores.
And so the contribution that is of 2,000 to 2,500 rupees is probably coming from people who earn 30,000 rupees a month, 40,000 rupees a month. And if ordinary people like that can fund elections, then I think that can really change the politics in our country.
It's not money that any politician is earning through their business ventures. It is money that is coming into the system through corporate houses, through people with vested interests who contribute to a political party because they see that they would gain from it eventually.
Crowdfunding is a very, it's still a space that's completely controlled by savvy people who have access to the internet, who understand the importance of issues like, say, political finance, which is still a very policy subject. It's not a people's subject. But we hope if there is enough support from the society as digital India grows, as more people have access to internet, and if the right kind of messaging reaches their inbox or on WhatsApp, they would want to participate.
There is a cap on the expenditure of candidates. Now, and at the end of every election, every candidate is required to give an affidavit of election expenditure. In 2009 Lok Sabha election, we analyzed the affidavits of 6,753 candidates. Out of 6,753 candidates, only 4 candidates declared that they had spent more than the limit. They had, of course, lost. 30 candidates said they had spent about 90 to 95% of the limit. So 6,753 minus 34 is 6,719, which is something like 99.99 recurring percent. These people said that they had spent only about 45 to 55% of the limit. This is one set of data. Those affidavits exist, sworn affidavits.
The levels of human ingenuity to break the rules are just amazing.
In my earlier book, which was called An Undocumented Wonder, The Making of the Great Indian Election, I had listed about 40 modus operandi of abuse of money, which we had detected till then. Now, these guys are smarter, they must have come up with new modus operandi. The biggest of which is the money reaches the destination before Election Commission comes into the picture.
Particularly in the states of the South, where there is a lot of money now, whether it's from mining, whether it's from other sources, there tends to be a huge overspend.
Amounts have been confiscated in excess of 300 crores by the Election Commission in states like Karnataka, and this amount is more than the Election Commission allows for throughout the entire campaign, and they've confiscated this much, and no party is bothered by this huge amount of confiscations.
So we had an observer in Karnataka who was watching a milk van going up and down the road until he became suspicious, and he stopped the van, and it didn't contain milk at all, but it contained liquor.
In gold chain, in liquor, in cash. This happens during every election.
We have made life difficult for the people with money bags to abuse the money in the election by catching them, by we raid them. We have lots of measures to catch them.
Our observer stopped that ambulance, and it contained money and freebies and cricket sets and dhotis and saris, all for distribution.
That is one problem which we still need to tackle with.
India has 7 nationally recognized political parties, and the income of these parties, excluding the CPIM, stood at 1,293.05 crore rupees in the financial year 2017-18.
Political funding process is wrong. Nobody knows where do political parties get the money from.
A major change that the BJP has accomplished is that it doesn't look for localized funding. It doesn't do funding drives. Donate online, membership drives, all of these are basically data collection ventures, and there's something to show the public that we want public support and public money.
Because they might raise a few crores based on the Namo app or their crowdfunding, but they're spending thousands of crores in their elections.
Unless that is known, it is impossible to determine whether the decisions a particular party and a government set up by a particular party, the decisions they are taking are due to in the public or national interest or in the interest of one or more of their donors.
What's actually happened is that funding for the entire party and the entire system has been corporatized and centralized. BJP today is probably one of the only parties that is in a position to fund every candidate's campaign from the central level. Just because of that, the people at the top in the party will retain more power. If you look at parties like the Congress, it is still quite decentralized. There are leaders at the local level who fund their own campaigns. There are state chief ministers who fund the elections for their states and work on raising money at the state level. There is no central funding from the centralized office of a party. BJP that way has completely transformed the model.
That in 2013, the amount of money that the Aam Aadmi Party spent on the Delhi elections, which was 20 crores, was spent by the BJP almost, our calculation was, on the last day of polling, when they gave front page ads to every newspaper. So the amount of money we spent on contesting 70 seats was spent by them on one day.
If that kind of money is being used in political finance, in election funding, is this election something that an ordinary citizen is able to participate in? Are we being limited to just a vote? If 30,000 crores was what was spent in the 2014 elections, we're looking at a few hundred crores per seat. That makes elections unapproachable.
Out of all the donations received by the national parties, 36% were from known donors, such as from donations above 20,000 rupees. This amounted to 467.13 crore rupees in FY 17-18. 11% of the donations, amounting to 136.48 crore rupees, were from other known sources like sale of assets, membership fee and bank interest. And a whopping 53% of the total donations came from unknown sources, amounting to 689.44 crore rupees. As per records filed by these parties, in these unknown sources of donations, 51% were donations below 20,000 rupees. 16% of the total amount was collected from sale of coupons. 1% was miscellaneous income and 31% from electoral bonds.
The way political parties, all political parties, collect money to a larger or smaller degree is not transparent.
Earlier, there were some stipulations which gave some window, a very small window, because political parties have to file their income tax returns. So we, after a 3-year struggle in the Central Information Commission, we now get copies of the income tax returns. And the other information they give is a statement of donations to the Election Commission of India. So if donations which are more than 20,000 rupees each. When you put these two statements together, you can figure out if a political party has, let us say, declared an income of 1,000 crores, their donations would be only about 200 crores or let us say 250 crores would be explainable through the donations. The rest 75 to 80% is completely unknown where it comes from.
Here we have a cutoff at 20,000. So the result is that anything below 20,000, even if it is 19,999, is below the radar. And that can be given in multiples and there's no accounting for it. And why doesn't any government change it?
There are a lot of groups, including us, trying to get this made more transparent. But the current government 2 years ago introduced a scheme called electoral bonds, which has made electoral funding completely opaque. The finance minister is on record saying the electoral bonds will be in the nature of bearer bonds. The identity of the donor will be anonymous. Now, since this statement had come, we've been looking for a dictionary which tells us that anonymity and transparency mean the same thing.
When the finance minister started his speech, he started very beautifully when he said that for the last 70 years, we have been trying to solve the problem of money power in elections and we have not succeeded. Second statement was that without transparent use of money power in the election, free and fair elections will not be possible. Now, we were expecting some transparency to come in, but what have we got instead? Two things. One, the electoral bonds, which have taken away whatever transparency there existed before.
Electoral bonds are promissory notes, similar to a bank note. They can only be purchased from the State Bank of India in multiples of 1,000, 10,000, 1 lakh, 10 lakh and 1 crore.
Political parties only declare that we have got X crores of electoral bonds. Where they have come from is not known.
What existed before was that every donation of 20,000 and above was reported to the Election Commission. Now a donation of even 20 crores is not in our knowledge. It is all anonymous. So what are we trying to do? The reason given was that the donors want secrecy. Now, donors want secrecy because they want to hide the quid pro quo. Because if they give 10, 15 crores, there is no free lunch. Surely they want some favor. And that favor should not be known to the public. That's why they want secrecy. Now, public wants transparency. Now, public concern probably should take a precedence. And that is what the finance bill missed.
The other issue with electoral bonds is that they have a potential to choke funding for all parties in the opposition. And this is possible with any party which is in power. It is not necessarily the current ruling party. Any ruling party would have this facility.
The reason that electoral bonds were brought in is actually a lot more complex, but it has a lot to do with looking at the state of regional parties and looking at the state of all the other opposition parties right now in India.
Although the scheme says that the State Bank of India will collect the KYC or know your customer particulars of the buyer of electoral bonds, and it says the SBI will not tell this to anybody. Now, if the SBI is not going to tell it to anybody, why collect this information? Now, since they are collecting it, there is an apprehension or there was an apprehension that information from the SBI as to who has bought electoral bonds will go to RBI and or to the Finance Ministry, and once it goes to the Finance Ministry, it would be available to the political executive.
What is the guarantee that once they lost power, they'd actually be able to access those funds? Just because of that, electoral bonds are a much better system for a political party.
Therefore, if somebody buys electoral bonds of 100 crores and starts driving towards the office of an opposition party, the ruling party has the facility to call that person and ask, I believe you have bought electoral bonds for 100 crores. Whom are you going to give it to? And that is signal enough that if you give it to somebody else, there might be some unpleasant consequences. Now, this apprehension, when I said it was an apprehension, it has now been proved. With the data of the electoral bonds that were issued and donated last year, 95% of the value of electoral bonds has been donated to the party in power. So, there are these multiple issues with electoral bonds.
Last year in March 2018, the Lok Sabha passed the Finance Bill without debate. The bill sought an amendment to the Foreign Contribution Regulation Act, FCRA, that exempts political parties from scrutiny of foreign funds.
It is now again theoretically possible for any entity anywhere in the world to set up a company in India and then funnel money through that company to electoral parties.
Foreign funding has been allowed, and which is very dangerous. Now there could be drug money, international drug money. Now there could be other countries who can control our politics through funds. Everybody knows that the funds are a controlling mechanism.
I don't think there's any money coming directly from overseas. If there is a company registered in India, then that company alone can contribute. So if you are a company registered in the UK, you can't contribute to Indian elections. But if you have registration of that large multinational, and all the multinationals are here, so if they're registered here, they can. So the same rules apply. The ceilings that have been removed, I'm okay with them, as long as everything that is contributed is declared.
That money can be from any source. There could be drug dealers, there could be arms dealers, and whoever. It opens political funding to also foreign influence.
Both the Congress and the BJP had already accepted foreign donations in violation of the law, and there was a court case happening against them, and both of them would have been found guilty in the case. So they retrospectively changed the law from 1984, basically stating that any donation from that time period onwards was absolutely legal.
The other issue is that when the electoral bond scheme was notified, it said that there was earlier under company law, a company could only donate 7.5% of its profits.
The limit was for a good reason, so that the companies do not start indulging in politics. That limit has been removed altogether, which means a company can donate 100% of its profit to a political party. And obviously, for what purpose? To run the politics of the country.
Earlier, there was also a requirement that the company should have been making profits for 3 years before it can donate. That has also been removed. And there was another stipulation that every company giving a donation to a political party will have to declare the name of the party and declare the amount that it has given to the party. This has also been removed. So now there is complete, it's a black hole.
Now, crony capitalism, about which we were concerned, has been institutionalized and legalized. So that is what makes this bill very dangerous.
But the reason governments don't deliver is actually related to election funding. When candidates and when political parties end up taking money from corporations, when end up taking money from contractors, when they get elected into power, they end up working in the interests of those who have supported them financially rather than those who have voted them into power.
Anyone who funds a political party can do so for two reasons. They can do so for the reasons of ideology. Either if they are ideologically connected, then they would expect to see the ideological moorings of those political parties reflect what they are standing for. But for the most part, they would expect that after the election is over, and this I say particularly for smaller companies, to see what benefit they can get.
If they get money from the public, they work for public causes, why can't they make this public?
I believe that crowdfunding as a matter of principle is something that should be taken up by all candidates and all political parties. Because if citizens fund elections, then once you get elected into power, you would be working in citizens' interests.
The message is really important that money is coming from the people and it's not going back to the people in terms of cash rewards, So that's the first strong message. And while the message is important, the number of people who are giving you money, they end up becoming your ambassadors.
The Election Commission is an umpire of players. It is not the player itself. Now, if there is no transparency on where this player or that player is getting all its money from, then that's only half the battle won.
No political party is willing to be transparent. Every political party says we are willing to be transparent provided others are willing to be transparent.